night he almost didn't go was the same night his life quietly began to change. Rain fell in thin, trembling lines over the city, blurring the streetlights and soaking through his worn jacket as he stood outside a large, glowing house that felt far too elegant for a man like him. Daniel Carter, a single father who had learned to survive on exhaustion and hope, stared at the door with a heaviness in his chest that had nothing to do with the cold. This was his dead boss's house. His dead boss's wife was inside. And somehow, against all logic and comfort, he had shown up. Before the story pulls you deeper into this moment, take a second to pause. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet ways life can surprise broken people, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them. Daniel had lost his wife 3 years earlier, on an ordinary afternoon that became unforgettable for all the wrong reasons. One moment she was promising to bring home milk, the next she was gone, taken by a reckless driver and a fate that didn't ask permission. From that day on, his world narrowed to school lunches, late-night laundry, and the soft breathing of his 6-year-old daughter, Emily, sleeping beside a nightlight shaped like a moon. He didn't dream anymore. Dreams felt irresponsible when bills stacked up and grief waited patiently in quiet rooms. His boss, Richard Moore, had been one of the few steady presences left in his life. Richard was demanding but fair, a man who noticed when Daniel worked late and quietly adjusted his schedule so he could pick up his daughter from school. When Richard died suddenly of a heart attack, the office fell into a stunned silence. Daniel felt the loss more personally than he expected. Richard had believed in him when he barely believed in himself. Showing up to the memorial events felt less like obligation and more like gratitude. The invitation to the party came weeks later. It wasn't a celebration, not really, but a gathering Richard's wife, Eleanor Moore, organized to honor his life and thank those who had supported him. Daniel almost threw the invitation away. He didn't belong in rooms filled with polished shoes and soft laughter. He belonged in grocery store aisles counting coins and in small apartments where the heater made strange noises at night. But something pulled him there anyway, something quiet and insistent. Inside the house, warmth wrapped around him, carrying the scent of candles and fresh flowers. Photographs of Richard lined the walls, capturing moments Daniel had never seen, vacations, smiles, a life that seemed fuller than the office corridors where they'd known each other. Eleanor moved through the room with a composed grace that looked practiced, as if she had taught herself how to stand tall while her world collapsed. She wore black, not as mourning, but as armor. Daniel tried to stay invisible, clutching a glass of water, nodding politely when spoken to. He planned to leave early, slip back into the anonymity he was comfortable with. But the night had other plans. Eleanor noticed him across the room, her gaze lingering with an intensity that made him uneasy. It wasn't pity. It was recognition. She approached him slowly, thanking him for coming, for everything he had done for Richard. Her voice was steady, but her eyes held a storm she wasn't letting spill. When she asked him to follow her for a moment, Daniel felt his heart pound in his ears. He assumed it was about work, or some unresolved detail. Anything but what came next. In a quiet room away from the noise, the air felt heavier. Eleanor's composure cracked, just slightly. She spoke of loneliness, of nights spent sitting in Richard's study listening to the clock tick too loudly. She spoke of watching Daniel over the years, noticing his patience, the way he spoke about his daughter, the way grief had softened him instead of hardening him. She admitted that in the months before Richard's death, she had found comfort in Daniel's presence, not as betrayal, but as a reminder that kindness still existed. She had liked him then, quietly, guiltily, and she had carried that truth alone. Daniel didn't know how to respond. His life had taught him how to endure, not how to receive complicated emotions. He felt unworthy of her attention, confused by his own feelings stirring after years of emotional silence. He left the room shaken, the party continuing around him as if nothing had changed, while everything inside him had. In the weeks that followed, he tried to forget that night. He focused on Emily, on work, on routine. But Eleanor reached out, first with a simple thank you note, then with small conversations that felt unexpectedly natural. They talked about grief without dramatics, about how loss reshapes time, about learning to live alongside absence instead of trying to outrun it. Their connection grew slowly, carefully, like something fragile they were afraid to break. Daniel struggled with guilt, wondering if he was betraying Richard's memory. Eleanor wrestled with her own doubts, fearing judgment from a world that rarely forgives widows for wanting to live again. But in each other, they found understanding without explanation. Emily noticed the change before Daniel did. She noticed the way her father smiled more easily, the way laughter returned in small, surprising moments. When she met Eleanor for the first time, it wasn't dramatic or awkward. It was gentle. Eleanor knelt down, listened to Emily's endless stories, and treated her grief with the respect of someone who understood it deeply. Life didn't suddenly become perfect. Bills still came. Nights were still quiet. Grief still surfaced without warning. But something fundamental had shifted. Daniel no longer felt like he was walking alone through a world that kept moving without him. Eleanor no longer felt like she was frozen in a past she was afraid to leave. Together, they learned that love doesn't replace what was lost, it simply grows around it. As months passed, they faced whispers and raised eyebrows. Some people couldn't understand how a relationship could grow from such complicated soil. But Daniel and Eleanor didn't owe anyone a neat explanation. Their story wasn't about scandal or convenience. It was about two people who had survived the same storm from different sides and found shelter in each other. On a quiet evening, long after the party that changed everything, Daniel sat watching Emily sleep, her chest rising and falling peacefully. He realized that for the first time since his wife's death, he wasn't afraid of the future. It still scared him, but it no longer felt empty. If this story has touched your heart so far, if you've ever felt alone in your grief or unsure if happiness could find you again, please take a moment to like this video, share it, and subscribe. Your engagement helps keep stories like this alive, and it reminds others that healing is possible. Eleanor found her own healing not in forgetting Richard, but in honoring the love they had shared by allowing herself to live fully again. Daniel found strength not in pretending he didn't hurt, but in letting someone see his pain without trying to fix it. Emily found a wider world, one where love didn't disappear when someone left, but changed shape and stayed. Their story didn't end with grand gestures or perfect resolutions. It ended with quiet mornings, shared coffee, school runs, and the understanding that life, even after profound loss, can still be generous. Please comment if you believe love can find you even after loss. In the end, Daniel realized that showing up to that party wasn't just about honoring his boss. It was about honoring life itself, in all its fragile, complicated beauty. And sometimes, the bravest thing a broken heart can do is simply walk through a door, not knowing that on the other side, hope is waiting.